They're holding this school board meeting in the school library.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I guess I can hear you guys too. Yep. Okay. Why don't we go ahead and start? Would all who wish join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So next up, we have two agenda adjustments. Sorry, it's midnight here. I'm probably not going to be my clearest. Adding item 8C, which is an MOU with the OEA, and removing item 8BI.1, which is the IJOA field trip policy. Is there a second to those adjustments?
Second.
Okay, any other adjustments?
I would just add that we also do not have any co-curriculars tonight.
Okay, we'll skip that too. Anything else? We'll go ahead and vote. Jake.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Noah.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion carries. I can't see where you're all sitting, but I assume it's the usual places. Next up, we have the minutes. I would make a motion to approve the minutes of March 20th as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes or corrections? We'll go ahead and vote. Jake.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Noah.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion carries 5-0. I would make a motion to approve regular warrant 20, payroll warrant 20, capital improvement warrant 8. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Go ahead and vote. Jake.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Noah.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion carries 5-0. The floor is open for public comment. As you can see, we have some specific policies, namely cap at 5 minutes, and that would be a very long public comment and not directly commenting on employees either positively or negatively. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move forward. Start with acknowledgements. Jake?
None at this time.
Kevin?
Just thank you to all the teachers and administrators for the curriculum and programming around the eclipse. You know, it's sort of, it's always nice to see, you know, it's what I say, how curriculum adapts to whatever is happening locally and of interest. So, and also I guess the patience with families that may have taken their kids out of school early. So that's disruptive for teachers and predictability, and I'm guilty of that. So thank you for all of your patience and support around that recent event yesterday, right? Yesterday? Seems like forever. Today is Tuesday. So thank you everyone for all that you did.
Noah?
Yeah, I'll second all that you just said. No, it's fine. I wasn't good times. And I just, you know, I also really thought I'd probably report that the literacy night at ASA was really great to all the folks that helped put that together and bring everyone into another sort of one of these community events where folks come into the building and interact. It was great to see that happen.
Great. Mark?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Marissa or Dorsa?
Congratulations to the show choir on winning silver at states.
Both high school and middle school, as I understand it, correct?
Yeah.
Yep, congratulations. Meredith?
I would add also that Marissa received an individual award of a musicianship award.
Yeah, I got a solo musicianship. award.
Yes, a solo musicianship award at Shofar Estates this weekend. And we've had several musical performances. We had show choir showcase since we've last met, and we had orchestra concert since we've last met. So congratulations and thank you to all who made those evenings special for us. And also, since we've last met, Pierce Walson was named Gatorade Player of the Year for boys basketball in State of Maine, which is a big accolade. Congratulations to Pierce.
Thank you. Move on to principal reports. Carrie?
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'll just start with a few celebrations. So first, I would like to thank the ASA ambassadors for participating in kindergarten registration night. They had the opportunity to tour the school building and bring families around. And it was really one of the first times that the ambassadors have had a chance to do this. So we really appreciated all of them, and the families really enjoyed having them there as well. Other celebrations, we mentioned the orchestra concert and show choir. So ASA students have been very proud to participate in those events during the month of March. And this Thursday coming up will be the Rainbow Fish musical. So hopefully you'll have a chance to maybe stop in and see that. I'm certainly excited to see that. And then we also had 2 ASA 5th graders who participated in the middle school math meet last month, and we just got the results of that in. So a big congratulations to Sophia Crisp Torres for coming in first place, and Bryce Weaver, who placed in the top 10. We're very proud of both of them, and they will be excited to participate in the math meet at UMaine next month. So shout outs to them. And then other than that, I'll just highlight 2 quick things for you. First was the mention of the literacy night, and the staff worked really hard putting together projects around our theme of our table. And it was so wonderful to have so many families and folks in the building, and they had the opportunity to go around and view the projects, as well as we had a map set up with QR codes to all the different books, so families could go home and enjoy those afterwards. And we got a lot of feedback around that people enjoyed the opportunity to go back and listen to those stories. So the ASA teachers worked really hard and the students worked really hard, and it was a really wonderful night to spend with families. And then the last thing I'll highlight is the literacy leadership team has still been hard at work this school year. They've currently been planning for some teacher upcoming work days to work on phonemic awareness and phonics curriculum. So that will be happening in the month of May, as well as they are planning some days in the month of June after school gets out to start looking at some evidence-based reading resources. So we're excited for that work, and thank you to Susan for helping that team with all the work that they've been doing this year.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments?
I guess I just want to add into the orchestra concert that acknowledgement sort of, but like that it was so, this is I think one of the real strengths of our school here is that, you know, that you have 4th through 12th grade all playing in the same concert together, and it was just to see these really high level like violinists, right, playing with the emerging 4th graders. It's just, and the way Waldo Caballero is able to integrate them all, and the way our school is able to support that, it's just really an amazing opportunity for everyone. And like, I know we do this across a lot of different areas, but it's just, again, really seeing that integration is really cool. So.
Great, thank you. Richard?
Good evening, everyone. I want to start with my recognition of a staff member and a student. Mrs. Soderberg earned, as I noted right in my report, Maine State finalist for 2024 for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. And so well done to Mrs. Soderberg. I know she's been doing some Tier 2 intervention work. I mentioned that at the beginning of the year. That's been going very well in supporting mostly sixth graders with filling gaps that they might have had, identifying and filling gaps. So that's been part of her work this year with us, and I just wanted to thank her for that, and that's going very well. On the student side, we have Maya Briacek won the Maine Middle School State Championship in chess in the U800 category. So congratulations to Maya, and that was on March 20th. I just wanted to recognize her. The eclipse was a lot of fun, getting glasses out to kids and all of that, and it was a very strange day at school. We had if you added up the number of students who were absent and or who left early, like to go view the eclipse, we're approaching 60% of the student body. So there's great enthusiasm around, many around the eclipse. Many of those students traveled up into the zone of totality, and there's a lot of excitement today and talk about what they saw. So I just wanted to note that we have our spring testing update. The week of May 6th, we're looking at doing the state MEA, the NWEA version of the state test in reading and mathematics that week, and then the science assessment the following week, the week of May 13th. We'll take that one on. That will be just for 8th graders. And another recognition, we had our show choir, directed by Tina and Phil Burns, did a fantastic job at the extravaganza. And this past weekend, they earned silver and at the state show choir champion festival. And so hats off to a great job there as we try to grow that program. And on Friday, coming up, we have our 4 to 3 celebration breakfast. We do that every quarter with students. The broadcast from the OMS office, that's going on first thing Friday morning. Followed, and then around 10:30, we're doing a little collaboration with Jenna Costa, and where we're working on having a short performance in the OPAC with our jazz band performing for their peers, and that'll be just before lunch. And then at the end of the day, we have ASA students coming up and working with Chad and Kristen in the gym in our OMS circus. Our middle schoolers get to show ASA students what they learned in PE and demonstrate some of their skills. So lots going on.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments?
I just want to add on to the show choir props that they also got a soloist award and won for best choreo in the middle school. Thanks.
Great. We'll go ahead and move on to the high school. Sam and Meredith.
Hey, everybody. First, I just want to say happy spring. It just feels so nice outside. And so I just want to say happy spring, because if any of you were like me, last Thursday was a little bit of a downer. So I just want to start with that and say very happy that the weather's good and the sun's out. Many of you have said what I was already going to say, but I just feel like in a lot of ways, I just want from Meredith and I to express our celebrations as well in regards to what you guys have shared. First, our National Arts Honor Society and National Spanish Honor Society, which is actually the Spanish one's tonight. The arts one was back on March 11th, but just congratulations to all those students and that hard work that they do and the honor that they've earned to be a part of those societies. Also, I am extremely excited about the Orono High School Jazz Band. They earned a gold rating, and you may have mentioned it in our last meeting, but I just know the amount of work and effort that takes. And the music that they produce, just like someone said about the orchestra, is absolutely amazing. So congratulations to all of them. And our saxophone section earned a soloist award as a whole group, but then also Henry Buten's earned the Dale Huff Outstanding Musicianship Award, which is really amazing. So good, congratulations to everyone in that regard. Also Pierce Walston, I echo what Meredith Higgins says, that's a huge honor. And we are just very proud of the work that he's put in and what he's brought to our community and our program. So congratulations, Pierce. And our math team, they continue to do an amazing job with the leadership of Heather Holmes. On Tuesday, April 2nd, they went to the state math meet and they all performed well, and they finished 7th in the league of 22 schools. and second in the Eastern Maine Math League. Many earned great scores and some honors in that. But congratulations to all of you. I am definitely not a mathematician, so I also highly respect that as well. And as everyone has said, congratulations to our show choir. Congratulations, Marissa. This year was definitely a year in which you all came together and produced yet another amazing program, and we're immensely proud of you. So congratulations. Meredith?
Thanks, Sam. So a theme in conversations recently has been how to blow up the closed circuit of learning that happens between student and teacher and get that learning out into real context and real audiences in a way that has built in a motivation and engagement that is bigger than what the classroom can offer. And on that theme, something to share that was too recent to make it into the report today. Erica Dixon brought the OHS Environmental Club down to the State House for the Maine Youth Day of Action. An impressive showing of 25 Orono High School students. Listened to speakers. One of the students was a featured speaker at the event, and then broke off into sessions to learn about different approaches to climate justice. We had a long conversation with Lori Osher about advocacy pathways for students who want to see their causes turn into legislation. And it was the last week of the session and a very frantic day on the floor. So I think that was good for kids to see as well. The topic of the day was the wind farm and the sandbar. And I was hearing this from a few feet away, so I don't have the details, but that was action unfolding in real time for students. The culmination of a year's worth of learning is going to be upon us really quickly with our AP exams beginning May 6th with AP Gov starting us off, and then will run for 2 weeks, and then shortly on the heels or after we'll have our morning of testing wherein we will have our 9th graders taking the NWEAs, the 10th graders doing the 3-year assessment, and the 11th graders taking the science assessment. And that was a model that worked really well for us in the fall. And we hope to see continued success with that this year in this season. We recently held a team planning session for the summer camp for rising OHS 9th graders. And, the conversation revolved around wondering what it could look like if we merged, specific instruction in about the interaction between water and land, along with the cultural orientation of, these students bringing with them their own histories from their own communities and their own experiences to come together in our class of 2028. And it was really awesome to see what can happen when a group of diverse perspectives come together around the question about what's best for kids. And over the course of that meeting, what emerged was the idea that the summer camp could offer students an opportunity to map themselves and each other into this region in a way that followed the waterways that unite us all. And to put together an interactive map that would potentially become a project that could transcend not only the students' experience in 9th grade, but their experience at OHS overall, and culminate in really potentially a public project that could offer an audience community-wide and maybe wider perspective on what it means to be a kid here at OHS and part of our community. And so we're really excited about where that's heading. And our next planning meeting will be April 30th. And then lastly, in the spirit of learning that makes its way out into the world, Orono High School had a very impressive showing at the Maine State Science Fair. In a sudden pivot because of weather, everybody had to present online, and almost every single one of the students who had a project to share took away either a category award, full scholarship to the University of Maine, or both in the case of Saladin Wise. So if it was really, really amazing to watch the work that those students have been engaged in recognized at that level. So hopefully there'll be more public displays of learning like that to come soon. That's all I have for tonight.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move forward. Superintendent's report.
I have two items to bring to you tonight outside of the agenda. One is we are preparing to move forward in the process of reviewing applicants and interviewing for our vacancy for an OHS math teacher for next year, and need a board member for that committee. Meredith, can you speak to the timeline around when you plan to get started and hold interviews? That sometimes helps people know their availability.
We would be looking at optimistically, the week following break to conduct interviews, but depending on availability, potentially, the week after that. So we have been accepting applications for, I think, about 10 days at this point.
22nd or 29th, but 2 weeks. So
Yes, the week after break would be the week starting with the 20, that sounds right, 22nd or the week of the 29th.
what's the timing of the interviews or?
It usually they're after school.
Anybody can do it, but I would be up for it. I mean, math is near and dear to my heart, math education in particular. But if anybody else wants to, I wouldn't fight you for it.
I would say Kevin or Brian are the most qualified, and given that Brian is in multiple other time zones away, probably not the best fit for him. So I'd certainly be supportive of Kevin doing
That's- Sounds good to me if that's okay with everybody. I mean, I'm certainly interested, but yes, I would have to be on Zoom. So if Kevin's willing, that would be great. Is that okay with everybody? No, were you interested too, or?
I'll let Kevin do it, it's fine.
I trust your judgment as well.
You go for it.
Okay, I'll go for it.
Okay, so Meredith will reach out to you and you'll hear from Rachel and the committee getting started. Thank you. The other item is around our school calendar. Last Thursday's cancellation pushes our last student day now to Monday, June 17th, which is, you know, not the end of the world, obviously, but less than ideal. However, what's problematic is it pushed our seniors out of compliance with the minimum number of days required. So at a minimum, we need to submit a waiver for our seniors. I've learned that some other districts around us have submitted a waiver based on the you know, state of emergency that was kind of declared in December around the storm and power outage days. It's really that second power outage day that kind of put us out of sync with what most other districts around us had to do that time. So I wonder if the board would support submitting a waiver for that one day that would have helped the seniors be in compliance, but also was the one day kind of beyond what, you know, others around us had to be out because of our power situation. It requires board approval, and then Brian has to submit a letter on behalf of the board to the Department of Education to request the waiver.
So when would the last day of school?
Well, if we have no more days, and so it would make the last student day on Friday the 14th.
If we get the waiver.
If we get the waiver.
If not,
If we
it's
ask
that
for one
following
day,
Monday.
you could ask for 2 days. I tend to think one day is a reasonable ask because of the factors I just mentioned. But it does put us at risk if we have another weather cancellation and
So if we ask for 2, is it likely we won't get it, or is it?
I don't have a sense for, I feel like it's a harder rationale in my mind to make for 2 days, but I do think there are districts who've asked for 2 days just because there was a declaration of emergency, state of emergency in the state. But I don't think that that's altogether common that districts are asking for those 2 days to be waived, or one day, whatever, how many days they had.
Regular student days are 175. What are senior days?
170.
I was not aware of that.
just as a vested senior, what happens if the waiver is not approved? What would,
You'd have to go to school another day.
would that change when graduation is, or would we graduate without, one thing or
It
another?
wouldn't require you to come back after graduation. Yeah.
You could always develop a headache. if you
I have no concern about them approving for seniors. That's pretty,
I say we ask for the day, and then cross our fingers that it's April, whatever it is, 8th or 9th, and we're gonna be all right.
Can you ask for a second day later, or? So you're like,
we can.
yeah, it seems like it would be good to.
Yeah, I mean, we can ask for another day at a later date if something comes up. We actually asked for a day pretty late last year. We had a safety cancellation late last school year. And asked for a day in May, I think, when we requested that, we received that waiver. So,
Yeah, I'd prefer to ask just for a day now. 175 days is a shorter school year than most states have. And there's a lot of talk about trying to expand that out to 180, which is obviously not a conversation for tonight. It's not happening in Maine anytime soon that I know of, but I'd hate to cut it even shorter to 173. So I'd prefer to ask for a day, and if it snows again, we can ask for another day.
And I mean, just to, because, so if you ask for 2 days, does that mean we'd have to take both? And would they grant us? Cause we still, and we did like, and we could still end on the 14th.
I don't think you have to do whatever the department grants, but I don't think you should ask for days that you don't intend on using. Just think
Yeah, I mean, it's the same person who's getting this letter every year, so they presumably have a memory. So I'd rather not be crying wolf.
So we
So
probably need, yeah,
I would
Okay.
make a motion that the board authorizes me to work with the superintendent to request a 1-day waiver with a specific request for the seniors, but a request overall for the entire district. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Go ahead and vote. Jake,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Mark? Oops, I skipped
Aye.
Noah, sorry. Noah,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. Passes 5-0.
okay, thank you.
No co-curricular nominations. Whoops, I was jumping ahead anyway. Budget is next. So I was trying, but I think we better have the budget discussion just to set the stage. As we said last time, this is we will talk about budgets officially twice more. Once to say, yes, the numbers you were giving us are really what we told you last time, and they're final, and once to actually sign the warrants. But really tonight is decision time. Lynn needs time to work with our lawyer to get the warrants formally prepared and so forth. So yeah, tonight is the time that we have to make our final recommendations. If something really, really drastic changes, big enough that we want to make Lynn work even longer hours than she does, we might be able to change things at the end of April meeting. But basically, we should assume this is our last chance to change the budget. So Meredith, you want to walk us through the documents?
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen because I know that we're having trouble getting board documents up on the website, so you can kind of see what we're talking about. Let me just get that started. So we're going to start with Lynn spending some time talking you through the end of year projection. That is her calculation of where she's forecasting we will end up this year, because that's an important part, I think, of your consideration of our unassigned fund balance. So Lynn, can you just talk us through
Sure.
this?
So we've kind of been talking all along about the concern of tuition revenue. So it's probably not a surprise that you look. I was actually a little surprised that we are not going to hit our tuition revenue, but we have enough special ed revenue and some unanticipated state agency client revenue. That bumped us up to hitting our overall revenue, which is great. But you can see that the 9,982.89 is the amount that I'm projecting over at this point. Of course, we're still waiting on some things.
Why do we do extra special ed? Because we're taking in other towns and we don't have enough staff.
So we had some one-on-ones to kind of answer that question. We had some one-on-one ed techs that were out of district that we were not anticipating. So we were able to recoup that back. And then also, we're still waiting to see if we're going to get a superintendent's adjustment. We've requested superintendent's agreement. We've requested it. It usually comes this time of year. We don't get it every year. It all depends on where our superintendent's agreements come from, what their funding is compared to ours. So, that still could change a little bit, but I didn't count on it. So, but you can see in last year, we were over our revenue by 300,000. And this year it's only 9,000. So that's why I've been a little bit like wiggly about not sure. I knew we were going to be close with our revenue. Our expenditures, we're right about where we were last year, or where we anticipate the balance to be, a little bit less. That's where it's a little bit harder to project. I don't have I can't see into the future, and it changes daily. It's really a moving target. When I finished this and gave it to Meredith, I've changed it twice since then in those few days. So, there are things that are going to happen, but that's our best prediction. We did put a little bit in there for unknown. So, so if you go down a little further, you take our expenditure balance of what we're anticipating and our revenue balance, and you come down to our projected year-end balance. So last year, you can see that was over what we had put in for our assigned carry forward. And this year it's under by 109,000. So what that means is that according to this projection, we will need to use $109,000 of our carry forward to balance out our budget. And then through the warrant articles, we put 200 in capital improvement and 50 in fuel stabilization. So the net change to our unassigned projected is 359,000. Where you can see last year it was 41,000. So, we're not going to use all of our carry forward, but I think we are going to dip into it this year before even the warrant articles. But again, it's my least favorite tax because I like to be accurate but I can't predict. So I do my best judgment and talk to as many people as I can and hope I'm as close as I can get.
We officially stipulate that it's a prediction and not a promise.
Right.
So any questions for Lynn about this information? Okay, so this is probably an important thing to track when we're talking toward the end about our unassigned fund balance. And thinking about, how we might be using that this year. So, this sheet, as you know, is kind of showing you where we are, but I want to skip the sheet for a moment and come back to it. And talk about kind of the work we've been doing to bring the overall budget down and, trying to work down our tax increase. What you don't see on the sheet, I don't think we have it anywhere here. Oh, no, we do have down at the bottom. It's hard to see though. The insurance savings came in. We thankfully are saving. And the increase came in at 5.73%. We had budgeted for 8%. So we were able to reduce that line in the budget. It's 41,000 and some change to bring some of the expenditures down, which was great. So everything on this sheet that you see that's not, that's up in this top potential budget reduction section, that's not highlighted in yellow, is what you saw last time. If it's in yellow, it's new to this sheet. If it's in white in this section, Lynn's already removed that from the budget for you to see the impact that has. So everything in this top section that's in white has been removed from the budget at this point. The yellow are items that, you know, we went back, looked further, tried to find additional reductions. And, you know, mainly we thought we were just looking for tier 3 reductions, but in doing so, again, you know, found some other tier 1 reductions. So the tier 3 reduction total, you can see that easily in the table up on the top right. It's 40,857. 67 at my eyes, 50 or 60. 60. $7.60. And then the additional tier 2 reductions, that's what that 11,913 is. And then the additional tier 1 reductions, 200. So you know, all of those together, if you wanted to tell us to go ahead and reduce everything in this list of 1 through 3, that would be an additional almost $53,000. And then, you know, if you told us just do the new 1s and 2s, obviously that would be like $12,000. So those are ideas for you to consider. I think, you know, if you have questions about any of these, Lynn or department heads, principals, or directors can tell you more. I think, you know, 3s are of the level that it's something that is a squeeze, right? It's not something that was not impactful in some way, but these are items that folks feel like we can do without for a year. Is kind of the frame of a tier 3 reduction. The staff reduction ideas, there's nothing new there. That's the same information you had last time. Those have not been removed from the budget. We didn't feel like we had a good read yet from the board on that. And then one-time purchases from unassigned, you see that list has grown. You know, that was one of the things you asked, to try to find any other one-time purchases if we could find them. So we found, you know, what looks like, I don't know, about maybe $15,000 more there than last time. And Lynn, I do believe that you've removed those one-time items in white, right?
No, we put the
Okay.
entire bulk of it in the revenue as one-time purchases. So the
Okay, so
85.
yeah. So they're not removed, they're in the expenditures, but the ones in the entire list,
The
sorry,
entire
the
list.
entire list of one-time purchases, both the white and the yellow, there's an offsetting revenue amount now for $85,000 and 85,537. So that, you know, those items would be purchased from unassigned. So, dental savings actually came in today and there is no savings. It's actually $1,000 more than what we had put in. It was higher than it has been. We haven't done anything with that. I would say that, you know, if you decide to go this route tonight, we would probably just say that dental change is going to just come out of our contingency if you know, gave us final directions tonight. So, what is not taken out either from expenditures or added revenue from unassigned would be in the top table, anything highlighted in yellow, and the staffing reductions. So if you look at this sheet, you know, with the things that we've changed, either by adding in more unassigned for one-time purchases or removing some of the tier 1 and 2 budget reductions we discussed last meeting, you can see that our expenditures are resulting in a $995,000 tax increase at this time, for you to consider where we go next. I'll stop talking, give you a chance to ask questions and discuss.
And any questions before we start discussion?
I guess I should say one other thing. The fourth page has our unassigned fund balance and the impacts potentially using Lynn's projection that may be pertinent to your thinking about if you want to use more unassigned to offset tax increase. So, you know, this year, our audited budget, FY 23 budget tells us that we have $2,883,416 in our unassigned fund balance. And those things listed in the middle here are the things that, you know, are tracking against that, using Lynn's calculations. So if Lynn's projection is correct, it'll reduce our unassigned fund balance to 2.5 million and some change.
Now, is that with or without this year's 829,000 added in?
It's without.
So we have 2.5 something plus 800.
No. It assumes the 829 is not spent and is still sitting in unassigned.
Okay, so that figure is with that number.
Yes, yeah.
But not considering the amount at all that we put into the FY 25.
Right, that's what the next,
29.
that's what the bottom set of numbers is about.
Okay,
It shows, you know, what we've put in this page that I just showed you. The 85,537 for one-time expenditures, the 91,000 and change for laptop, iPad replacement, and 200,000 for capital reserve. And, you know, again, that's all assuming that the budget and revenue all works the way we have it laid out, and that we don't need any of that 829,000 that we put in there as our buffer. So that just gives you a picture of unassigned. Sorry, Brian, turn it back over to you.
Yeah, any other questions before we start discussion?
I have a little one. Can you remind me of, the translation into mill rate? Like for every 100,000 or $1 million, like what the tax increase would be?
Yeah, so
Right now?
it's based on the property valuations that are delivered in August. So we pass a budget without knowing exactly. This year's FY 24's number was 577,000. It has been jumping up. You know, the real estate market's been pretty tight. If you wanted to be conservative, take last year's number, which is 577,000 as a 1 mil rate. So a 2 mil rate would be what, 1.14 million, 1.5 million. My best, I don't know, in my head, I've been using 600,000 because it's a nice round number, and the way our valuations have jumped up the last few years, I'd be kind of surprised if we don't hit 600,000. So 9 million would be 1.5 mil. I mean, 900,000 would be 1.5 mil if you use the 600,000 figure.
All right, so for every 600,000, that would be an additional mill. Is that the correct understanding?
Correct, which would be $200 of taxes on a $220,000 home.
Thanks.
And
Yep.
I have just one more question, just probably for Lynn, just so I'm sure I'm right. So the unassigned balance that we think that we're gonna have to work with if we were looking at possibly taking something out to offset the increase would be 2,146,681.36. Is that, am I looking at the right number?
I'm having a hard time seeing this document. So Meredith, did you take out the 109 that I projected we were gonna use, or is that not out at all?
I think it's
Yeah.
out.
So if you look at the screen, look at the Zoom screen, Lynn, I have it up.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I can't.
It's the far bottom number,
Yeah.
right number, correct?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
in the.
Okay, that one in blue,
The FY 24 has one in blue that's this year's 109.
I got it now. Sorry, I wasn't in full screen and I couldn't read it and I couldn't figure out how to. So yes, that 2.1 would consider the 1.9 that I'm projecting we're gonna use for FY 24 budget.
So the assumption behind that is the 109,000 for multi, the normal 829,000 as our cushion carryover that has no tax impact. Right, the 91,000 for multi, and it has 200,000 to the capital reserve. Does it still? I don't see the 50,000. Does it have 50,000 towards the?
Yeah, it's up above.
That, in FY 24 it does. We're not doing that in FY 25.
Okay, we're not doing fuel stabilization in 25, so yeah, so it's got the multi at 91. It's got one-time purchases, which you saw on the previous page at 85,000. And it has doing the capital improvement reserve at 200,000, right? Which has kind of been our target and an agreement because that gets us to 500,000, which is what we figured we need to be doing realistically to knock off our capital plan. And that's all before we take out anything extra to try and reduce the gap. But that's basically the starting point before we take stuff out to reduce the gap.
So that, get one last question on this, just to make sure I'm right before I start throwing stuff out there. So that 2.146 does not include the 829,000.
Or FY
when you say-
25.
When you say it does not include it, we need to clarify what you mean by that.
If that 829,000 got spent, it would come out of the 2.1 million. It's just that we don't expect the 829,000 to get spent.
I guess I'm
really?
asking which 829, the one that we have on the colored sheet for FY 25 or this year's?
I think you're talking about FY 25.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in that 2.146 million, that 829 that we would like to keep as a cushion is included in that total.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's
Yes.
assuming we're not going to spend that.
So assuming that is off the table, we're really looking at something more like 1.3 million to play with.
Assuming we spent
If
our
we
budget
spent the
down to
whole-
0.
Which is, we haven't even come approximately close to ever, right?
Right. I just want to make sure I'm.
Yeah, worst case, if we do that, the town is authorizing us to spend, up to the full revenue and full expense picture, which would take the reserve down to 1.3 million.
Yeah, I've got no interest in doing that. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what we're doing. All right,
It
I'm
is-
good. Thank you.
It's embedded in the 2.1.
There's one other thing that I forgot to have Lynn mention about the projection, or not the projection, the budget page here. Lynn, can you talk about what you've done in revenue?
Yes. So we did reduce our tuition regular and tuition sped from the last version for two reasons. Just information that we've gotten between now or then and now. I had originally built in 23 ninth graders. We reduced that down to 20, which I still don't feel like is super conservative.
You think
Just
we're gonna
based
get
on-
less than 20?
What's that?
Do you think we could get less than 20?
I think it's a possibility. I'm hopeful that we will not, but I think it's a possibility based on just the information we have today. We have heard from more than 20. But one says we're a third choice. A couple we're still trying to figure out really residency issues. And we don't have very many that have actually registered and signed up for classes. And we've already had our registration night, so we only had 3 kids come to registration night. Now that doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to, register and sign up for classes, but I just don't feel super, super confident that all the kids on the list are going to register or going to be our choice, because many kids do pick us, register for more than one and then make a choice. I have honestly heard of a couple that have done that and did pick us. So I just don't know which way it's going to go. So I guess I'm trying to be as hopeful as possible with also trying to be cautious. But honestly, with the information right now, I can't tell you 100% we're gonna get 20.
Thank you.
And again, with SPED, it was just, the information we have. The information we have right now is we've heard from SPED directors, which kind of aligned with what we had. But parents are reporting themselves whether there's an IEP, so there's still information to be found there, and it's just fluid. So I tried to be, again, hopeful, but also not over project. And I think some of the confusion, with the question that you were asking, Mark, for me is just because I see 829,000 on both years on this colored sheet. So I was trying to make sure that we were all talking about the same 829,000. So that's why I seemed confused as well.
No, that's totally fine.
So I think that the revenue picture is something that is an important thing for you to recognize. What's driving that is really our high school numbers coming down. And I think that's an important part of our thinking about reductions and where we're reducing and how we're reducing. And, the region doesn't look good. I mean, I've heard other superintendents talking about enrollment declines through pandemic, and we've been like, things are good here. We're really lucky. We're holding really steady and growing. But the residual effect of their enrollment declines are starting to hit us in the base, what we call the sending town base. Their numbers are really low for the foreseeable future. So it's something that we just need to keep an eye on.
This is not an immediate, obviously we don't need it for this budget, but and this would probably be, better served as a request for information, but I'll throw it out there now. After we're done with this, and after kind of people start to firm up their incoming first year classes, I would be interested in seeing what like our competitor schools have been trending on in the last, whatever, 3 years, give or take, and I'm talking about Bangor, Hamden, Herman. I suppose you throw Old Town in there, although I'm less interested in that. But I'd be really interested in Bangor, Herman, Bapst, and Hamden, and just to see what their numbers have been like. If they're going down too, then I'm less concerned. If their numbers are holding steady or increasing, then I'm like super concerned.
I mean, that's definitely.
One of the things to find out is resident versus tuition, and that's.
I don't care about resident. I'm caring more about tuition. That's
Right,
really
so it's a little hard to tease that out from the outside looking in. We'll have to figure out how we can tease that out without we could just ask them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I bet you they tell.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely not a conversation to have tonight, but there's three things that could be going on, right? There is a large graduating class, larger than average, right? As Meredith's saying, the base is going down, and then there's also our yield out of that base, right? The percentage that we're attracting. So be good to have a conversation in that context with those three numbers in the future. All right, we ready to dig in on the budget? So again, we have three levers. We can cut expenses, we can raise taxes, we can take money out of the bank account, right? And between the three of those combinations, we have to make revenues match expenses. Right, taxes and taking money out of the bank account make the revenues go up, cutting expenses make the expenses go down, and they have to meet in the middle. 995 is over 1.5 mil. It's still too high for me. So I'm just going to lay out where I'm at, and then I want to hear where other people are at. I would like to see that driven down, probably at least below 900. So starting with expenses. I personally, I'm fine with the new 1s and 2s. I think we should do that. I'm fine with the new one-time expenses. I think we should do that. I personally do not want to go into the 3s, among other things. It's just not that much money. And among other things, it's I feel it's really starting to rob future years, right? These are no longer, we don't spend that account down, so let's just mark that account down. This is we actually normally would spend that money this year. And so if we don't spend it this year, there's just going to be pent up demand next year. That's also going to look like a budget increase next year, even though it's not really a budget increase because it's just right backfilling what we didn't spend this year. So I personally happy with the new ones and twos, happy with the new one-time purchases. I don't want to go into the threes. So let's see, the one-time purchases are already built in, the new ones and twos. Yeah, the new ones and twos pick us up, another, if I'm reading that, another 12. Yeah. Yeah. And I think we have to look at the personnel. The proposed central office, I think there's actually a good case to make that position could pay for itself. But I just think the optics in this budget year of adding staff, it is not something I can support. I kind of think it's important to recognize that personally, I'm betting next year is not going to be that fun either. So that's probably saying that position is not getting filled for 2 years. But that said, I kind of feel like that's where we need to go. I hate having to let staff go, but we were just talking about the high school numbers. The honest truth is, if we were, when I first got on the board, there was a tradition of kind of never cutting positions once they were created. And of course, you can imagine where that ends up. It's a ratchet effect where you just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when students drop, you're not able to track that. So we've had a policy for a long time, probably as long as Mark and Jake and I have been on, and Meredith has been here, of really trying to track where the student numbers are. And when the students come in, things go up. That's happened at the high school at least once, if not twice, since I've been here. But that also means if you're going to do that, the other strategy is just hold it steady, right? And when the students are high, the teachers just stretch and have bigger classes. And when the students are low, you don't have those positions to get rid of. But we've always kind of gone more in the other direction of increasing and decreasing to match the student numbers. So I think we need to do that this year. The numbers clearly aren't there at the high school. To be perfectly honest, the numbers are probably there to even look at another position on top of this one. I don't think I want to go there, but I do think, unfortunately, we have to take the high school social studies position and put that on the table. So that's 12,000 plus another 50. I don't have my glasses, 52,000. So that's like 64,000, which doesn't quite get the 95,000 that I want to get done.
Insurance
So-
is not added in there yet, correct? Or it is?
Yeah,
The insurance savings is added?
yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah. So there's
Yeah,
nothing.
it's 930,000 is where that gets you, Brian.
So that gets us down to 930. I think so. The last lever remaining is drawdown. We were at an extremely high number post-COVID. I think we all agreed that number was too high. I don't think that we want to go a whole lot lower. But I think personally, I think drawing down at least 50 and maybe 100 is where I would recommend. And if we're drawing down 100, there's two options. One would be to take it all out of unassigned one. In other words, drawing that balance down lower. The other option would be to only put a 200, put 150 into capital reserve instead of 200 and to draw down by 50. I think that's what we actually ended up doing last year, if memory serves me.
No, we did,
No, I don't
we
think
did
we did.
200.
We did 200. Okay, I thought I saw 150 somewhere, but okay. I mean, that's the option, right? We could draw down the balance, or we could put less into capital reserve. I don't have a super strong opinion, but I feel like between the balance and capital reserve, I want to take at least 50, and personally, I think I want to take 100. So that's kind of where I end up. Just to recap, the new ones and twos, both positions, don't cut the threes. The one times and the insurance are already rolled in. And so take another 50 to 100. I'd prefer 100 through either drawing down the balance and or cutting the capital reserve contribution. At that point, that takes us below 900,000, and it's still a huge tax increase, but it's below 1.5 mil, where we were looking at above 2.1, 2.2 middle when this process started. So I feel like we've done a lot of due diligence. And, you know, we've talked about how the state is sticking us in this place, and I don't think this district wants us slashing services. So that's where I end up.
Can I ask
Where-
a question?
Yeah.
Do we have a contracted math coach now or no?
Mhm.
We do, okay.
So that would effectively, it would be a contractor, but it'd be a cut.
Yeah.
And it's also, you know, I've been pushing for a math coach full-time for probably 8 years, and this is kind of a nice little dip our toe in part way, right? It's like a third of a person, so.
How's
it's a
that
way to-
working for us?
Really well.
Yeah,
We-
okay.
we would hate to see us
All right.
have to lose it.
And really, that's the biggest piece of the threes. Once you take that out, the rest
Yeah.
of the threes are not
Right.
not a whole lot.
Well, that and the rest of the threes, like you said, Brian, are supplies, right? So if you take them this year, you're gonna need more plus next year. So you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul.
What do other people think?
I'll jump in. I've made some notes. I have a number of things I would agree with Brian on. I do think part of Orno is the services we provide. And part of our representation is fiscal, and part of it is making sure that we provide the sort of services that parents expect or people expect. My understanding is that the 1.5 mill rate would amount to somewhere around whatever, $25 a month for a $200,000 home. And I'm not saying that's nothing, but one thing that I've been thinking about, while there are certainly people on fixed incomes in Orno, I don't want to, reduce that. And we don't know how many. So there's another tension I've been thinking about, which is how many students get impacted by a cut versus how many taxpayers are impacted by a tax increase. Not that anyone likes tax increases, but when we reduce services, we do affect students, some number of students. And so there's an obvious tension there. So at, Brian's sort of goal of getting to at least 1.5, it's not a horrible tax increase. And the great thing about taxes, this is a great way to get unelected. The great thing about taxes is it's a distributed load, right? Everyone pays $25 a month, and we deliver amazing services to 1,000 students. That's an amazing opportunity for, not an insignificant amount of money, but a couple hours at Maine State minimum wage delivers an amazing school experience. So I don't want to undermine that. I'm remiss from removing positions. Though, the half-time financial administrative assistant that person's not here, so that's an easier one to give on. I could be convinced through compromise on the half-time social studies, though I don't like laying people off. Again, unless the argument can be made that, students aren't going to be impacted. I also agree that the tier 3 don't amount to enough to cut. In the sense of you're going to save less than $1 a month to impact kindergartners and middle schoolers and high schoolers. I see kindergarten cubbies on here, and that's not a big thing, but it's all these little things that do affect both the staff's well-being, the teacher's well-being, the student's well-being, for what, 25, 30 cents a month, not willing to cut those things. Spending $100K from unassigned, I'd be fine with that. I do want to keep our capital reserve up. I think we had a really interesting conversation the past year about the public's perception of the school in this condition. And so I don't think we should go back on that. I think we need to keep working on the schools. That's a really good plan. And we're only 1 year into 10 years. So this would be the wrong time to stop on that. So what I'm saying is I'm roughly aligned with Brian. And again, it's not, you have all talked about the due diligence you've done. The administrators have already been finding places to cut. And it's not an absolutely huge tax increase. I'm not saying it's not nothing, but it's doable for most. There's certainly some people that are going to be impacted. There's my piece.
Just on the tax, I will just say again, which I mentioned last time, this idea of the income-based tax relief, which the town council is now talking about with, there are models in towns nearby that do this, and I still think that's, thinking, our worry is about like the folks that can't afford it, whether that we can actually have it implemented this year, but in the next couple of years, in the long run of what we think we're doing with what our mill rate targets are and our increases and stuff, so. I think there, to your point, ways to make the tax increase even less. So, but it is a real model that people are looking at, that Cumberland and our harbor already do, and other towns. Yeah, so it's not like reinventing the wheel. And so they're.
No, you might need to speak up a little.
Yeah,
Just thinking about that.
anyway, that's all I have to say. I don't think I've heard
Did
anything
you,
to say.
did you just want to keep going while you're in it? As
No,
far
I'll
as-
let someone else, I just wanted to add that into the, yeah, thank you so much.
So I'll go. So I'm gonna be brief. So I'm okay with the ones. I'm okay with the twos. Let's leave the threes. I don't want to go there. I'm fine with the halftime social studies. I'm fine with the halftime admin. I'm fine with the one-time purchases. I like Kevin, I don't want to reduce the 200,000 for capital reserve, so let's keep that at 200, but instead of taking 50 from unassigned, take the 100 there. That's where I'm at.
I'm pretty much in the same spot, with one exception. I mean, I'm definitely in favor of all the ones and the twos. I do not want to do any of the threes. I'm okay with both of the positions, that are listed. So that gives us up to 65. I don't want to touch the amount that we've set aside for capital improvement. I want to leave that at 200. For me, I guess the place that I probably differ, and I'm fine with the one-time stuff, although that's already baked in, so that's irrelevant. I guess the one place I might differ a little bit from what's been said so far is for me taking an additional 100,000 out of reserves as a minimum. I'd be willing to double that and go up to 200,000 out, which would get us down to about 730. Still over a mill. For me, going into this entire process, a mill was kind of where I wanted to end up. I didn't want to go much higher than that. You're still over that with that number, but I don't see anything else easy. And then the only other thing I would say is kind of piggyback on something Brian mentioned. I don't necessarily know that we need to do it this year, but if next year's incoming class of tuition students looks the same, I think additional staff cuts at the high school have to be on the agenda. They just have to be on the table. I think I agree with Brian, I think another position could be on there right now. But we'll leave it for now, but if this looks like this again next year, I don't see how we can't do that.
And to speak further, a little bit further to that, something Brian kind of mentioned, which I wholeheartedly agree with, if we're gonna be willing to add staff when population swells, we need to be willing to look at staff reduction when it doesn't, or when it actually retracts, right? Like, if we're gonna be fair with that process, we have to play it both ways, at least in my opinion.
I'm good.
I guess, I'll just start with the staff reductions, just in principle, like on I understand like needing to add and decrease after population increases and decreases. I think that it makes more sense if you want to do that, to take that approach using a sort of a slightly longer window average of the student body than like 1 year at a time in terms of like cutting. And then cutting and increasing and cutting, it seems like onboarding and just stability of lines, it makes more sense to say, if there is a long-term decline and we need to think about what needs to decrease in the future, we see that trajectory. I wouldn't, like, I understand responding year to year increases. I think in cutting, we should average over a longer window than 1 year or two to decide now it's time to reduce. So I think that's just for the well-being of the staff members getting cut and for the process of having a reverse course and onboard these two people, new faculty teachers. I think that we should, even if we want to maintain like for every increase we have a decrease, when we do cut lines, we should do so in a little bit more gradual or long-term kind of process while maintaining that zero sum balance. So I would be more hesitant to just cut a line just for this year without seeing that long term. And I guess I don't fully understand the implications of like the social studies, there's a staff member that would be cut like half a line. Maybe you could clarify again for me what?
Yeah, this is the position that we added. This is the second or third year of the second, right? Second year of this position that we added when we had the large bubble of kids that are now juniors and seniors in the high school. And so with the largest class graduating and the next largest class is seniors they take fewer social studies classes, we can see, the demand has changed. Our junior and sophomore classes next year are small classes, our incoming freshman class is a small class. So we have this, 3-year cohort of kids that is, changing the, number of kids taking those courses. So that, and then the English position that we reduced out of the budget this year, but are proposing to move back into the middle school next year, are the two positions that over the years we have added and removed, at different times with cohorts that needed either more or less staffing.
And when you removed it, are you always sort of letting people go, like?
Either that or it's happened through attrition of other things.
Okay.
So it's happened both ways.
And so in this case, would it be like a direct, like? Sort of-
Yeah, there's a person in the position right now.
Yeah, and I guess, it's just hard for me to think, and like, is there, I don't even know how, when hired, like, is there an expectation that? Like, hoping that this becomes a permanent thing, or is,
I mean, I
I
don't know what that person's expectation was.
But-
These positions have come and gone as a result of enrollment fluctuations. And so, while I think people hope that they're not going to maybe be seen that way if enrollment changes, that's always how they have been added and talked about and discussed.
So,
And both tenure are written into the contract, but also the fact that reductions can happen in response to budget needs, that's written into the contract. So again, can't speak to individual expectations, but it's written into the contract that that's a possibility.
yeah, I guess with that, you probably know where I'm coming from, but I think that, I'm okay with the 1s and 2s, cause I think we're like everyone, I don't want us to cut into the 3s and cut those. And I guess I would just say on the staffing, I think that I would cut into the, our reserves or to cover those. If I would cut either into taxes or reserves or, to cover those. I don't really care which one particularly, but, I think drawing down more makes sense without cutting those positions or cutting that one position. And I think if that central office position pays for itself, like, which I think we've heard this, and it seems like it makes the case for all the grants that folks are getting, like, having that support seems like would be a logical thing. And I don't know about the optics of it. I think that that's what we need to do. And I think that people will support that. So that's where I would not cut those.
So Noah, can I just ask you a question? You've
Yeah.
talked about the OHS position as being a 1 year, but it's never, I've never cut things just based on 1 year. As Meredith laid out, we already have a 3-year vision, right? And no reason to assume it's going to turn a corner in year 4. So it's not keeping this position as an excess position for 1 year. It's keeping this position as an excess position for 3 years. Does that change your thinking, or is that still what you're wanting to do?
So. Wait, so, yeah, would say that again. I guess I'm not fully,
It's,
So
we already have baked in what the senior, right? It's not just what's in the high school this year, but we know who's going to be a junior will be a senior. We know who's a sophomore will be a junior. We already know that our freshman class is way down. We know that our uprising, 8th grade class is not super big. It's not super small. And we know that our outlying towns have a very small 8th grade class, right? There's at least 3, if not 4 years of visibility that that position, social studies is going to be overstaffed relative to the students who need to take classes, right? It's going to make what are already pretty small classes in this district even smaller.
And beyond that, in your last couple years of high school, you're not taking a lot of social studies classes. You'll take a psychology or a sociology, but not typically the bigger one.
So, no, it's fine, obviously, for you to think what you think. I kept hearing you say it's a 1-year cut, but it's really not. So I just want to make sure that you understand that and hear where your position is after that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we were talking about like cutting more lines based on, yeah, I mean. I don't know, I guess, on that one position,
Meredith, there's a regional enrollment study on the horizon, right? Is that true?
There is some discussion about it. We've begun some data collection ourselves and are, looking at that. I mean, I was talking with Matt's here today. They have fewer percentage tuition students. I think he said 25% of their high school tuition. But one of their big towns is Milford that sends to them. We get some Milford, but Old Town gets more. And he was saying that in the last 5 or 6 years, Milford has dropped 100 kids. And that's just an example of, one of the towns. Glenburn is the same. Glenburn's had a huge drop. So we're seeing, our sending towns are, having lower enrollments than they've ever had. And so that's what we're seeing coming. And that's why, Noah, when you are worried about 1 year, we wouldn't make a decision like this for 1 year savings.
No, we wouldn't.
So.
And is there, I'm sure this is happening, so I'm not looking for details, but has there been some discussion about like future retirements and then the implications of this study to kind of figure out if long-term there's a possibility of lower and lower enrollment, those folks that may be retiring, positions that become vacant, just not being filled, kind of think about the longevity of this versus like a position a year, maybe there'll be opportunities in the next 5 years to just not refill positions.
Yeah, that's not usually information that we have.
That's fair.
And, sometimes those aren't the places where you have capacity to be able to reduce a staff member. But certainly when those things happen and it intersects with, a time that we see a reduced need, it's, works out really well. Or if someone's, moves away and leaves and, we have an opening, but we decide not to fill it because something changes, and those are, happy coincidences when it works that way. But with retirements, we don't have that information often, sometimes until after the school year's over, that someone decides to retire, actually.
Fair. All right.
So let me see.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Meredith. Let me see if I can pull us back up. 1s and 2s, unanimous. Holding the lines on the 3s, if I recall correctly, was also unanimous. So those are pretty clear cut. The one-time purchases were unanimous, so those are clear cut. The proposed central office, I heard, was 4-1. So unless somebody changes their mind, I think we, it's not unanimous, but we seem to have reached a consensus there. Not taking money out of the capital reserve seems to be pretty unanimous. I was the closest to that, and that was not something I wanted to do. So that seems to be unanimous. So the 2 things that are kind of still at play and discussion are the halftime social studies position, which so far I'm hearing 3.5 votes, if I counted Kevin as a half vote. I don't know if that's accurate. And so drawing down, all the drawdown would be out of the bank balance. I heard 4 votes for 100. I heard Mark go for 200. To be honest, I could be talked into 200 too. So I think those are the 2 things: is the social studies position and the 100 to 200 on the bank balance. So with that reflection, does anybody have new thoughts or change their opinions?
don't, feel, you know, with the 200,000 versus 100,000 from unassigned, because I'm not sure, does anybody want to play devil's advocate and tell me the cons of that?
I'm sure
So-
Lynn would.
Yeah. I mean, the pros and cons are we get down to something like 1.3 mil instead of 1.5. Right, which is actually, that's no longer a record-setting jump. We've done that at least once in the past. You know, but all those you say, Kevin, the 0.2 mil difference, especially if you take it on a monthly basis, is not a blindingly large number. The con is just that our reserve for future bad years is smaller, and I'd put money on a bad year next year, and I don't know. If I had to bet, this is much more speculative. We've got 2 or 3 more bad years ahead of us. So it's really just eating up our cash reserves, right? This is not going to be a choice next year. This is going to be a tax increase next year.
And, you know, some of the things that we've been using unassigned to pay for will become increasingly probably more uncomfortable to be able to do, like the extra 200,000 into capital improvement, the technology replacement plan. And, you know, I'm just concerned about the enrollment picture at the high school and, you know, upcoming years, and you know, staffing, that will be really hard. Because so I just anticipate a couple difficult years ahead, probably, unless the state really listens and decides, you know, they have kind of ignored the inflationary cost that we're all seeing and having to pay for. But I just don't see that happening quickly. And so I guess I'm a little adverse to being as aggressive as a couple 100,000. I'm more comfortable with 100,000. Just because looking into the future.
I think we're gonna be having the same debate over how much to pull out next year at this time. To your point, I think this is the beginning of a harder period for us than it's gonna be. I think we're gonna continue to see the surrounding communities, sending schools population go down, which means we're gonna get less. And unfortunately, I don't think this is gonna improve anytime soon.
Lynn, would you
Yeah,
add anything to that?
No, I mean, I agree. I think we're all on the same page that it's going to be hard, not good, right? We know the teacher contract have pay raises that nobody knows what inflation is going to be next year or the year after, but are above the 1.8% kinds of increases that the state has been giving us. So that's going to squeeze. You know, the ESP is still not a matter of public discussion, but suffice to say that's probably going to be more than the state's giving us too, because the state's not even giving us the old inflation rate of 2%, let alone what might be a new inflation rate that's higher. So that's going to squeeze. The enrollments are going to squeeze. Special ed is continuing to squeeze. That's the biggest squeeze statewide. It's one of the reasons I don't think the state's going to step up and cover inflation, because they're really scrambling, having to try and cover the rapidly growing special ed costs statewide. So, yeah, it comes in cycles, but the nature of these cycles, part of it's the 4-year cycle of governors, but part of it's just, you know, these things kind of tend to run for a few year streaks. So if I had to bet, we got 2-3 more years ahead of us are going to be tough. So it's really just, you know, save the tax increase this year and give a bigger tax increase next year, or, you know, keep the reserve a little higher and give a slightly smaller tax savings this year and have to do a slightly smaller tax increase next year, extra tax increase on top of whatever else, you know, is going to happen in a bad year. So it's really, at this point, I don't think we're putting ourselves down to the point where we're going to go bankrupt. But we're getting down to the point where, as Meredith said, it might be possible to take 300,000 of MLTI and capital reserve 3 years running if we are also taking money out to keep taxes down. So those are the trade-offs. To me, we have to pick a number, but I don't have a strong opinion. 100,000's difference between 100 and 200. It's 0.13 mil. It's, sorry, 0.16 mil. It's the difference between a balance of 2 million and 1.9 million. I don't have a strong opinion. I could probably be docked either way, but I guess my first instinct was 100,000. So again, that number in the social studies are the things we have to finish the conversation on.
Doesn't sound like anybody but me wants to go to 2, including Meredith, and I'm sure she hasn't said anything, but I'm sure Lynn doesn't want to do that, so, I could settle for 1, but I do think, though, again, just to point out, restate some of the obvious, that if this is really gonna be a 3 or 4 year cycle of bad years, there's gonna have to be a whole lot more on the table than we're putting on the table this year. So that was my thinking of take 2 this year, and then if it's bad again next year, then we gotta take a look at some other stuff. But it sounds like, the consensus is 100K. I'm okay with that. But again, keeping in mind that if we're looking at this again next year or worse, we're gonna have to do more than what we're doing right now.
Okay, sounds like that conversation is settled. Back to the 3.5 out of 5 votes for getting having to end the social studies position. If it ends up at 3.5 votes, that's even with 3 votes, that's a majority. But if there's conversation to be had on that to get a bigger consensus, that would be good too. Kevin is saying you're a half vote. Is that an accurate representation of your position?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense of, I'm sympathetic to Noah, but I also, I'm hearing, 3 plus the superintendent talk about the next 3 years of rather low, lower than current high school enrollment, so lower need. And so thinking about the impact of 3 years, this will be a conversation next year if it's not a conversation now. And so over, the savings over 3 years, and in terms of how this impacts other items going forward. So I could be a 0.4 vote here in a minute.
So it's just that, so the cutting this position. I mean, I guess what will be the change on the ground, classes or offerings?
What will be the change?
What would be the change?
Well, we run our schedule based on student request.
Oh.
So, the first requests that are filled are, graduation requirement classes. And then we fill electives with remaining space. When, as Marissa said, when you have, smaller freshman, sophomore, and junior classes, you have fewer required classes that you're needing to offer, because those are the grade levels that really most high school students take their required social studies credits. And so in terms of the number of electives, I can't predict. Meredith may be able to speak to that more specifically, but we don't have the data yet back from students to really tell you specifically, but we have at times vacillated in this department with this half position. So some years we've had it and other years we haven't. We've been okay in both times. So I can't tell you we won't offer this class. I don't know that. Maybe there's a class, Meredith, that we won't be offering next year, but sometimes it's also due to rotation and student interest kind of moves from one to the other. You saw all of the new courses coming. There were some social studies courses in that list. So I imagine one that's going to make next year is the history of sports, like US history of sports. That'll probably be really popular new elective. Sometimes when there's a new elective, students are interested, and it causes another elective to fade away and not have as much interest. So I don't know exactly what the impact will be, but I do know that when you had a freshman class of 115 students, you needed, and next year's freshman class looking like it's gonna be in the sixties, half as many sections of ninth grade social studies as we did when those kids were freshmen.
Yeah, I mean, another way to look at it is if we don't eliminate the position, class sizes are going to shrink, right? They're going to be smaller than they are currently. And, you know, if we could afford it, sure, that's great. But really, that's a way of saying to me, that we're over capacity, right? So you can't guarantee, as Meredith was saying, classes don't get offered anyway. So you can't guarantee we won't have a class that's canceled because we have new classes. But doesn't seem like class sizes are going to be growing radically because of this position if it disappears.
The position as it is now is carrying fewer students than we are projected to reduce the total population by. You know, so it really isn't, we're not going to be losing seats in classes. Yesterday during advisory was the deadline for students to enter their course requests in a power school, which means that, you know, now for probably at least until vacation, you know, we're chasing kids down who didn't enter those in. And then based on what those total numbers are, the schedule will be built. We did build some flexibility into course offerings in order to try to keep capacity as high as possible in terms of accessibility, because the other factor for our schedule is the way in which the matrix, you know, sometimes just makes certain blocks unavailable. If, you know, a kid wants to take AP Calc, then they can't, that class is offered one time. They can't take any other classes that are offered then. So that's another limitation that we have. But you know, this year, Holocaust and Genocide Studies was a semester-long class. Next year, it's going to be year-long, but students can opt into it on a 1 semester, a 2 semester, or a year-long basis. This year, African American Studies was year-long. Next year, students can opt into it on this in the same way to try to increase the accessibility of those classes. But our goal is to be able to, you know, structure this as we do every year, our schedule in a way that is responsive to, you know, the things that students are saying that they want to learn and the things that we know that they need to learn to meet requirements. But it'll be at least a few weeks before I can add any more detail to what the matrix for the English and Social Studies departments will look like.
I have another question too. I'm trying to remember back to the first budget conversation we had a month ago. My memory was that like, this was on the table, right? Essentially, but I thought there was much less support for cutting it. Maybe my memory is wrong from folks. Like, is it always been just like an obvious cut that everybody is?
It's been on our list from the first time we talked about it, which said it was, you know, came to our mind immediately because, you know, some of us who've been doing these budgets for a while know that, you know, we have to look at enrollment to look at some of these positions that we know have been added at times and pulled back at times. So it's a place I'm always looking. I'm looking every year at this. So, you know.
Yeah, so, but I mean, this one was from the beginning, a month or two ago, you
It was something I put on the list from the very beginning.
and you feel strongly that it makes sense to get.
I do.
I mean, nobody wants to go there, Noah, and that's why nobody was jumping on it the first time. But you know, here we are. We got to make the numbers match out, and it's really hard for, you know, the students aren't there. If we're gonna go up, we got to go down, and that's a decision we made in this district. We're not making right. Ultimately, what we're doing is we're a student-centered experience where we're not saying, well, you just happen to be in a cohort of big students, so you're going to have big classes. What we said is we're going to staff up for these big classes, and that means we have to staff down for small classes. So nobody wants to go there, but you know, I think you've heard at least 3 people who feel like we have to go there at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess, you know, the administration, if you feel strongly that it makes sense and.
All right, so I'm gonna recap us up and see if we're here to close a decision. So what I've heard is there's unanimous support for all of the 1s and 2s, including the new ones. There's unanimous support for not doing the threes. There is unanimous support for doing all of the one times. There is, more or less four votes and can live with it for 100,000 drawdown on the balance. And there is not necessarily unanimous, but there's majority support for not for cutting both positions. And so, and I think I'm pretty sure that's an accurate representation of where we're at. And we've gotten there transparently. So I'm going to ask you the question I always ask. This is the only time in the entire year I ask people to, vote, to vote as a consensus vote, because we pass this on to the taxpayers. And I just want to make sure that if it goes down, like I just said, that everybody here is comfortable going ahead and, voting yes on the total budget, even if the pieces aren't perfect the way that you thought they, should be. Does that make sense? And are people in that place at this point?
I think Meredith has something.
Well, I just want to be clear that next meeting is the final chance to change anything before we prepare warrants.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So doesn't Lynn usually want calculation time so that it's kind of like only if a big change comes down?
Yeah, I mean, we want, like, if something happens between now and the 23rd, we'd like the opportunity to bring that to you, right? Because
Right.
the closer we get to budget time, the more we can learn and know. So we may come back on the 23rd and be able to tell you something new. So I just want to make sure you know that there's one more meeting that we do a final check-in before Lynn prepares warrants.
I'm fine, Brian, with what you just described and would vote for this now. The only caveat is, as Meredith has pointed out, if in 2 weeks, something new comes on our plate, could be good, could be bad. If something major, I'm not talking like a couple grand here or there, but if something big comes in 2 weeks, then I reserve the right to change my mind. But with what we know right now, and I'm fine with what you just described.
Okay,
And
yeah,
with
and just to clarify, I'm not actually asking for a vote tonight. I just want to make sure that if this is what, what as often happens, this is what goes down 2 weeks from now, that we're going to be in that place with that vote. Everybody,
I think the bigger one is the expenditure side, because it's really hard to kind of adjust that on the fly in the next 2 weeks. But if we, get new information and decide to go from 100,000 to 200,000, that's an easy adjustment to make, more than like trying to leave things in and taking them out last minute. So
okay.
if that's helpful.
Yep, that's helpful. So the the drawdown and the potentially the tuition are really the only things I can see left that are still in play, right? We have our insurance. So yeah, but
And once we have clear direction from the board of where the board's leaning, then we can, like we did tonight, prepare the one-page sheet so you can see it with all those things factored in to get a real clear picture on where things stand. And that's what this conversation allows us to produce next meeting for a final
Right.
check-in.
I guess the other thing it lets us do is to actually start to prepare the cost center big changes sheet, right? That goes to the public along with the spreadsheet.
I guess I do want to just state that while I'm like probably willing to go with the halftime social studies cut, it's much less for budget reasons, given the amount of money it would cost per month to maintain a position, and more out of the idea that it would be, I mean, no person is superfluous, I'll make that clear, but rather that the position may not add to the experience, that there may be classes that end up with 3 students or too small. So the reason I'm leaning in agreement is that the idea that losing the position, not the person, that's different, doesn't greatly impact the educational experience. To me, $30,000 out of the annual budget, ends up being, a quarter is a month per person. So that's not a driving force for me, just for the record. But it's listening to Meredith and believing that's what's been presented here still provides a roughly equivalent experience for the number of high school students that'll be enrolled. So just for the record.
Yep. Noah, any additional thoughts?
No, I'll support it. Yeah, I mean, I think again, just like Kevin, like Meredith says it makes sense for the education, of it, but it's not, yeah, to me about the cost saving. I still, yeah, think to find out I still think the other position would be great, but, you know, I'll vote for the budget, so.
Okay. Meredith, you feel like you have clear going forward directions at this point?
I do. Lynn, do you feel like you have 30? Okay, we'll bring you back updated sheets next time so you can have the once over and that's when you vote. And that directs us to prepare the warrants and then you sign the next meeting. Affirming what you voted on the previous meeting. So that's what plays out over the next two board meetings.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Not an easy year, not an easy. It's pretty rare that budgeting is easy or fun, but some years are worse than others. This has not been a fun year. So thank you, everybody. Guess we can go ahead and stop the share screen so we can see everybody again.
Yeah.
And we have a MOU to bring to you, right? An amendment to the contract with teachers. You want to introduce that, Meredith?
Yes, in a close review of something that came to us, we realized that there was language in the teacher professional CBA agreement that we didn't change in one section that when I talked with Shauna and she spoke with her executive board and we both agreed that we intended to change all sections and we did not change the language in the sick bank articles. So we're bringing forward this to include partner in addition to spouse. The language throughout the sick leave article and around family leave and maternity, paternity leave, all references spouse and partner. And in the ESP CBA, the sick bank article has the spouse partner, and it's just in this CBA, we missed that one section to add partner. And something's come up to cause us to realize our mistake and we want to fix it. So we bring you this to ask you to support this change, and Shauna has talked with the executive board and they support this, as do I.
I was going to ask whether our lawyers looked at this, but I noticed it's literally a single word, but has our lawyer looked at it?
They haven't. I usually don't have them look at these when it's like either really simple language or parallel language, and this is parallel language from our other agreement.
Yep, I'm fine with that. I would make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding as presented and authorize the board chair to sign it on behalf of the board. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion or questions? Seems like a no-brainer. Everywhere's moving to include partners, and we have it 3 out of 4 places in our contracts, and this is the one place that we haven't. So seems like a no-brainer to do it. Ready to vote? Okay, Jake.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Noah.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion carries 5-0.
You gotta go
Let's see.
back to the water field trip policy.
I thought we got rid of that.
Oh,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
skipped that because we didn't have policy meeting due to the canceled
Uh,
weather.
All right.
Yep,
Process.
snow got in the way of that too. So we're on to subcommittee reports. You guys just got the policy subcommittee. We got snowed out. The top policy to deal with IJOA. We had a first read of it last board meeting. We knew it still needed some work. We're still talking to Jeff, who I see is online, who has some concerns about how it's going to impact some of his teaching. We're certainly going to have that conversation in policy. Jeff's welcome to make a public comment tonight too, if he wants to. But it will go through policy committee and, a conversation with Jeff before it comes back to the board. at this point, not until our May meeting, one of the May meetings.
I was gonna make sure to note that I assume that's why Jeff's been hanging out here, so maybe I'm wrong, but I assume that was true. So if that's the case, make sure that he has the opportunity to put that out somewhere, whether it's coming to the committee or submitting
Yeah.
something. I've just been assuming that that's why he was here all night, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I've already invited him to policy. He's already put some language in the draft document for us to consider. And like I say, Jeff, go ahead.
I'll just say thank you for clarifying what the next few steps of the process involve. And thank you for considering my my input. And I'll wait for my turn at the policy meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next report is UTC.
It was a pretty short meeting. We had it on Zoom because same thing, snow. And I don't recall anything noteworthy.
Budget approval.
Budget approval.
Yeah,
They've got plenty of money.
yeah.
They don't have problems.
Well, what tells us not having an assessment from our regional tech center, so.
Yeah, they don't need our money.
Spruce?
Yep, we did have a meeting. We did approve the budgets for next year. And I found out, as I'm looking over at Meredith, that that was probably our last Spruce meeting, not because Spruce will not continue to exist, it will. But the structure, as I understand it, is changing and there's no longer going to be a Spruce board made up of board members from other participating district boards. Am I correct?
I'm not clear on how it's gonna change under the press. So that's something that's not yet clear to me.
Yeah, I am fairly confident in saying that there will no longer be a Spruce board made up of board members from other districts. I think the superintendent group is gonna serve that role, was my understanding from the meeting we had. It's basically a structural change with Spruce. Nothing's gonna change as far as the services they provide or the programming or any of that. It's a structural change.
So you're ditching a committee assignment.
That is correct.
Strategic placement, Jake. All right, curriculum subcommittee is a week from Thursday.
No,
It's this week. Okay, this Thursday. And yeah, I'm too jet lagged to remember what's on it. Somebody want to remind me?
Sure. French textbook for recommendation for use at the middle school and taking a look at what components should be in course approvals or course proposals rather.
Great. Okay. Wellness subcommittee, anything new, Noah?
We're meeting May 6th is our next meeting, 3:15, May 6th, so.
Okay, DI leadership has not met since last time. Strategic plan, several of you were there. We were actually, I guess 3 of us were there. We were down a little bit more than usual, but what had happened is the group had come up with 6 goals. A subgroup of people, mostly the admin team, had worked through those 6 goals to try and put some flesh on what would it look like and what action steps do we need to take. We got first feedback from the group. That feedback is now going to go back into some additional thinking writing. It's going to go out to the public in a survey format. And then it's going to come back on, I forget, it's May 13th or 14th to the strategic plan. For Meredith and I were saying what we hope is a final draft. We'll see if we end up there. I know Meredith and I were also talking about maybe paying to, to have this turned into a glossy brochure over the summer, so that we might approve it as the board in June and then have it turned into a glossy brochure with some professional help that gets mailed out across the district in the summer. That's not a decision. That's a conversation to be had, but that's kind of just to give you a preview of the timeline ahead. Anything else you would add on that, Meredith?
Yeah, just that we're tracking to bring it to the board for a first read, hopefully by late May. And then, allowing a couple of different times by that last meeting, hopefully an approval of the plan.
I have to say, it's been a pretty non-contentious process. Most strategic plans at this point in time, when the rubber's starting to hit the road, have factions that are still angling for this and angling for that. So I've been actually pretty pleasantly pleased and surprised just how much of a convergence has been happening. So that's probably a good sign for the future on the implementation. Any other business? Any future agenda items? Any public comment?
There's nobody in the room, Brian, so.
Okay, there are a couple of people I see on Zoom who aren't always here, so I was just giving them a chance, but don't see them jumping in.
Can I ask you a question, Brian? Just,
Yeah.
Was that the whole busing thing on the listserv, was that, you said you would bring that up? In, is that gonna be on the agenda at some point?
Yeah, you're right. I did say I would put it on this agenda and then I didn't, mostly to be honest, because the town has been very responsive.
I would like to have that on an agenda for the school. I think we have.
Okay. I know that town council is gonna discuss it on Monday, and that is probably the timing works out better for us to have our meeting after the town council has discussed it. So I will make sure it's on the next agenda. Thank you. Yeah, Mark, you already expressed a request for information and follow-up. That's maybe not necessarily for next meeting, but the spring.
Yeah, I would
Any
think
other?
in the future, it's not something we can generate now, but it's, once we can get it, that would be helpful.
Yep. Any other requests for information and follow-up? I know we have an executive session on the contract. Do you think we would need to do that, Meredith? Is there anything new to update? Okay, we'll do that quickly. So I would make a motion to go into executive session under 1 MRSA 4056D. Discussion of labor negotiations. The only vote taken after we come out of executive session will be a motion to adjourn. So people are welcome to head out if they want to. Is there a second on the motion to go into executive session?
A second.
Okay, any discussion? We'll vote. Jake?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Noah?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. We're in executive session. Can we just place people in the wait room?
Yeah, yeah. Can you, but you have
You
to
can
turn
also,
off recording.
yeah, you turn on the wait, right? Turn off the recording, turn on